There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn, the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a book review of the British novelist Elizabeth Jane Howard's third novel, The Sea Change, published in 1959. With this novel, I am getting my chronology straight and reading the rest of her works in chronological order. I did the first two of hers out of order, and I'm doing this as a years-long buddy read date with my dear friend Leah from Calgary. We started with her second novel, The Long View, and then we decided to go back and read her debut, The Beautiful Visit, both of which were 5-star reads for me. And here I am with a review of her third novel. It's very different from her first two novels. I'm not going to say any more about that. I'm just going to talk about it in its own right. Even before I start to introduce you to the characters, the first thing to say about this is a technical masterpiece. It's a literary masterpiece of, especially of structure and point of view. There are 4 voices in the novel. 3 of them are first person. One of them is strictly in terms of writing, the young female character's diary and letters back home to Dorset, and the 2 other first-person point of views, and then one of the very most maniest of main characters is in the third person. So what Elizabeth Jane Howard does with that, and how she layers the story through these various points of view, is one of the things that makes it such a fantastic novel. If you know my channel at all, you know how much I hate the propaganda that the publishing companies put on the back. I hate synopsises, and especially the way they gloat. It's a compelling tale of love and survival. Well, that's bullshit. Anyway, I'm not going to rant anymore about it, but Leah read, I think, a first edition hardcover of this from 1959, and she sent me a screenshot of something that was on the inside flap about Elizabeth Jane Howard's writing. And let's just set the tone with this, because I, Shawn the Book Maniac, approve of this message. At a time when it is fashionable to write like a bored waitress bashing down a cup of stewed tea on a greasy table, how nice to find a writer with such loving care for the language, such enterprise in using it. Well, here on both counts. That's fabulous. I'd like to know who wrote that, but I have a feeling it might have been a gay man. Let's meet the characters. So we've got a 61-year-old Irish-Jewish playwright, Emmanuel. In the opening scene, he doesn't come across as being very upright or moral. He might be talented, but he's a playboy. And he's 61. He's getting too old for this. And so there's a scandal, or there's a big dramatic incident in the opening pages of the novel that I don't think I'm going to describe in any detail. I might change my mind later on, but he doesn't come off well in that. We don't get into his point of view for a few more pages. And then once we do, we can see the complexity that Elizabeth Jane Howard is weaving into the story, because there's a lot more to him than just that. That is true about him, and there are many other things that are true. And so that's him. His long-suffering wife, Lillian, she's 2 decades younger than him, in fairly fragile health. She knows about her husband's wandering eye and wandering other body parts, and doesn't seem to care too much. They have a very complex relationship. Some of the deepest connection between them is that their 2-year-old daughter, Sarah, died of meningitis 20 years before or something. And Lillian has never gotten over it. And Em expends a lot of emotional energy looking after Lillian's psychological and physical frailties. But there's a lot more to Lillian than that too, and we get to see much of this story from her point of view, as well as how the other characters perceive her. It's rich and glorious, and she's a fabulously drawn character. Then Jimmy. Jimmy is Emmanuel's right-hand man, factotum, Man Friday, assistant director to many of his plays, and just integrally involved in all aspects of Emmanuel's professional literary and personal life. He's much younger too. I mean, I think he might be 30 or something. I'm not sure. 40, 35. A big part of his job is cleaning up the messes that Emmanuel makes with the women he gets involved with. And also many other things. So those are the three main characters, and then because of this scandalous, dramatic incident that happens at the opening of the novel, the old secretary is no longer available. Read even the first two chapters to find out all about that, and they need another one. So Emmanuel's wife, Lillian, finds another one. Her name is Sarah. Well, Sarah is the name of their dead daughter, so it's very cleverly narrated. I had to go back just about an hour ago to find out, well, how didn't Lillian know Sarah's name was Sarah when she's the one that introduced her to Emmanuel? Well, she introduced her to Emmanuel as Miss Young. Didn't use her name, and we are led to assume that she didn't know her name. The men, Emmanuel and Jimmy, find out the next day, on their first day of interviewing her or hiring her or whatever, that her name is Sarah, and they say, "Can we use a different name for you?" And they explain why, because Lillian is just, it would be psychologically tortuous for her to hear that name bandied about in their lives, because that's the name of her dead daughter. So then thereafter in the text, she is Alberta. And so I will refer to her from now on as Alberta. The new secretary is Alberta. And Alberta is a piece of work. She's one of my favorite characters in all of literature. She's 19. She comes from a small town. Her father's the vicar in Dorset. And she has a wide-eyed, guileless innocence and perspective on life that has moments of crystal clear wisdom. And oftentimes that wisdom is delivered with a hilarity that I'm not sure she realizes is there. She's just an absolutely delightful character. So I fell in love with her, and so did the other men, the men in the story. And Lillian loved her in her own way too, but was very nervous that Emmanuel, her husband, was going to get all mixed up with her. That's all I need to tell you about the characters, and because this is such a character-driven novel, I don't need to tell you anything more about the plot. These people move from the UK to New York City and then to Greece. The settings are incredibly vividly rendered. Whereas in her first two novels, I think that Elizabeth Jane Howard was more thematically concerned with how do the women and other people in the orbit of these very kind of dastardly characters, who she does reveal their inner psychology, so we kind of understand why they are the way they are. But those men don't really change. This novel's called The Sea Change, and I'm not going to say anything about what kind of change happens, but the change happens for all four characters. The story moves where all four of these characters could reach disastrous ends. It just looks like a train wreck waiting to happen, and we get to this very dramatic climax. Or do we? Because Elizabeth Jane Howard has rendered these characters up to that point, and we've gotten to know them more and more deeply and seen that all of them are flawed. Obviously, they're human beings, but all of them are not simply flawed with benign and loving aspects of their characters, that when the ending happens, it feels like any other ending would have been just completely wrong. It's an incredibly powerful, emotionally moving ending. In lieu of reading a longer passage to give you a sense of the writing, I'm going to steal the excerpts that were included at the end of the novelist Sybil Bedford's fabulous introduction. And this is one introduction that if you get this newer edition, there's an introduction by Sybil Bedford, and she does a masterful job of avoiding any spoilers. So do read the introduction before you read the book. But she ends it with just some samples of her favorite sentences, and so many of them are mine that I'm just going to read them to you. You need very little context, and I'll give you what little context you need to appreciate the beauty and the potency of these sentences. So this is at a London party about the well-known successful people at this party in London. They had certainly made the most, and in some cases, too much of themselves. And this is about the characters on a Greek island. They walked behind the mule to the port, facing a young moon that lay couched in little clouds, like a young beauty on a bed of feathers. And this could be the précis or the theme, the epigraph to the novel. This is a quote from the end, but there are no spoilers in this sentence. How rare it is to live any promise out. How hard to keep every minute of any decision. How painful to reach even to the height of one's own nature. I love this novel. I think I've made that quite clear. I think you might too. Check it out. Thanks for watching.